Hi, everyone. Good morning. It's really nice to be here with you today. I'm Daniela Amaral, one of the executive directors of Engajamundo, a youth-led organization in Brazil who discuss climate change, gender issues, peace and security, and other important things that youth needs to be part of the discussion. So I'm glad to be here with you today, and I'm also glad that you accept the invite to be here discussing about and with the youth people from around the world. And also, I appreciate the people who are here in person, but also the ones who are watching us online. So I hope you enjoy this conversation, and I hope we can get out here with good news and good commitments. Also, once that it's a issue that we have talking about since the COP28 in the last panel, and it's a subject and a global framework that has been made to be launched in COP30, but still a time to figure it out. How's the best way to do it? So I would like to start this just 1 minute, but okay, so I just got here from a regional conference, the Regional Conference of Youth for Latin America and Caribbean of 2024, where we discussed the issues and the emergencies that young people from this continent figured out that it's needed to be looked at for authorities from around the world, once that is the second most affected region in the world by climate change, and also uh, a region who has a lot of youth being impacted by these effects that are going around the world. But I'm sorry, people, I'm a little bit nervous here. But thank you, Diane. But this is a place where we can talk together. I hope that together we can see how youth from around the world can be part of this kind of discussion, because it's not easy. I think we have a lot of trouble and a lot of difficulties easy to make youth being part of spaces like that, with the language and the ways to come here to New York, that it's not easy. So children and young people will be the most impacted by climate change, and they continue to be excluded from formal decision-making process. We have a data as 1 in 4 young people is estimated to live in settings affected by armed conflicts or violence. And from a nexus lens, many countries most vulnerable to climate change have young populations. Still, we are not in a lot of roundtables. We are not in big spaces where we can talk about our realities, where we can put where we live and our perspectives of the violence and how can we manage that, because we also have the manners to do that. So I think I just want to put a point where we have to have these authorities, although we need to have the youth people from indigenous perspectives, from Black perspectives, from women's and transgender people, and so many others like extractivists, as we call in Brazil, and quilombolas and another traditional youth. So just to point out that from here, from this roundtable, we are expecting to address some pact commitments as providing a platform to catalyze joint action and climate responsive peace and security, also ensuring meaningful youth participation in addressing interconnected global challenges, and promoting innovative approaches to conflict prevention and peacebuilding in the context of climate change. And I hope, and it's something that I ask for you, that we see the peace and security not only, and that's a really important point, but not only as the armed conflicts that we see every day, and then we see youth people going through, but also the covert violence that young people suffer from around the world, as the genocide from the Polish, it's the Polish, and the and the other aspects. I know my English is not very well, so I can put it right now, but it's important that we see that the violence is around the world. However, you see that in the newspaper or not. Brazil, it's not known right now as a country where we are in war, but we are, like Black people, indigenous people, we suffer from that every single day. So it's important that we look to peace and security, understanding that this kind of violence, the lack of education systems and health systems that supports to all of that young people, it's also an issue that we need to look at. So I think it's that. I hope you understand what I try to say. And now on, I just want to listen to you too. So, okay. I'm gonna start inviting Ms. Leila Hassanova, that's the COP29 of Climate Champion, to speak. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Daniela. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. It's a very important moment for all of us. Dear Excellencies, participants, hope that we can make this discussion very fruitful and we can all take our notes, go back to our respective countries and make sure we contribute to the process. I'm delighted to assume the role of the COP29 Presidency Youth Climate Champion following the adoption of the decision that was made last year by parties at COP28, which established the Presidency Youth Climate Champion role as a formalized one by the parties. I'm truly excited and honored to be carrying forward this mandate to facilitate the enhancement of the meaningful and inclusive engagement of children and youth in climate action, including within the UNFPA processes as well. It's very important and vital for children and young people to participate in the acceleration of peace and climate security. I would like to thank COP28 Presidency, UNFPA Global Coalition on Youth, Peace and Security, and YOUNGO for recognizing the importance of this nexus and initiating the process for developing a common framework for integrating youth, peace and security principles into climate action, in close cooperation with the incoming COP29 presidency. As we look ahead to COP29, I also wish to acknowledge the incoming presidency for its commitment to building on these efforts, further amplifying the voices of youth in shaping inclusive and sustainable climate solutions. This collaborative approach will be pivotal in addressing the complex challenges of our current time, which is actually very challenging. Also, I would like to thank all other organizations who have come together on board in this process and those joining us as partners today. It's a pivotal moment in the context of the Summit of the Future, delivering an action-oriented pact for the future, aiming to put the world on a pathway which is better suited to dealing with the challenges of current and future generations. With climate change being a global issue, the timeliness and punctuality of developing this exact global framework on youth, peace, and security in light of the increased vulnerability of young people to the impacts of climate change is an ideal window of opportunity for us to collectively galvanize momentum towards bringing forward this critical agenda. This is a moment for all of us where commitments need to be urgently translated into action if we are to foster a safe and sustainable, livable planet for all of us. Developing this framework must ensure a whole of society approach. This is understandable and we all see it this way, particularly the meaningful involvement of children and young people. Specifically, child and youth inclusive approach as a key towards developing a framework which can effectively advance climate and peace. COP29 Presidency is committed towards ensuring the full integration of young people and children as well across the various processes. At COP29, together with the partners, on November 15 this year, we'll be hosting an event as a continuation of this discussion and as a next step in the process of determining the establishment of this framework. The importance of empowering children and young people through capacity building, particularly in highly vulnerable regions, is key in fostering resilience and peaceful communities. Another essential element of this role is about enhancing education, awareness, and capacity building. As a result of efforts that we put together, we will be continuing on the road to COP29 and beyond to advocate for and create spaces for children and young people from all regions to meaningfully engage and contribute to this global framework. Once again, special thanks to our COP28 colleagues, UNFPA, YOUNGO, and the Youth, Peace, and Climate Security Framework. Thanks to those who are joining us today, and I hope that I would like to actually encourage all of you to make sure we put the efforts together today and we continue this dialogue at COP29 this November. Thank you so much, and I wish all of us a fruitful discussion.
Thank you, Leila. Now, I would like to invite the ASG, Diane Keita, the Deputy Executive Director for Programs, to deliver her opening remarks.
Muito obrigada, Danielle. Can we give a round of applause to Danielle as well? Thank you, everyone. Bonjour, Excellence, Monsieur le Ministre de la Jeunesse et des Sports de Madagascar. Bienvenue. Excellencies, Madam Ambassador from Denmark, dear colleagues from Sweden, colleagues, high level, my dear colleague from UNDP, dear colleagues, I don't see everyone, I don't see the names, so I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. Esteemed guests, fellow advocate for peace and climate action, dear young people, dear Leila, champion, all protocol observers in your rank, grade, and all the big, beautiful things you do. Dear Will, who is the chief of our office program in New York, who will sit exactly in my chair when I will leaving. I came to this meeting from a global meeting I'm chairing now with all the regional directors of UNFPA around the world on country program to make sure that we are accelerating all our point around the world, and it's not easy. I left on Iraq and Rwanda, exactly. So it's a tough job. So you will excuse me when I will have to leave and continue that. It is a great pleasure to have you all here. Warm welcome to UNFPA. This is for me the second event of the UNGA. We started yesterday. Some have started before. And I see people in this room, just like in your team, the young delegate Bear, who was so brilliant during the ICPD. So thank you for being here. It's, seeing the partner doing what they do. It's very critical for all of us. It's to join this open today's roundtable conversation, it's important on the concrete commitment needed to advance the youth inclusive approach to conflict prevention, peace building, and climate action. Those are all big words. And I hope everyone in this room believes in them. Because talking for the sake of talking, we have done that. This is the UN. Talking to walk the talk, that's what we are here for. And really, to have this before the opening of the summit, before the opening of the action days, I count on all of us. Wherever we sit, please make it happen. There is no one little or small enough, no one big enough. Everyone can make a difference at any time, at any single time. And this year, we have our most strongest advocate in the donor group and the donor community, giving us taxpayer money to make sure that we can move forward our programs. But you will also have member state countries who are investing their time and their people to make sure that things can be changing. In November 2023, we gathered in Dubai under the leadership of the United Arab Emirates COP28 Presidency to begin the development of global framework on youth, peace, and climate security. Since then, the torch has been passed on to the incoming COP29 presidency of Azerbaijan to take this important work forward. As we sit in this room, the severity of the climate emergency we face is growing more acute each day. An estimated 60% of the global population are experiencing heat waves due to climate change, which have already claimed thousands of lives and are affecting people's livelihood and life trajectory. We're talking about the heat wave, but we're not talking about the rains. You know, anything you take, there is too much of this these days. For young people, this is particularly concerning as the World Bank estimates that over 400 million students globally have been affected by climate-related forced school closures since 2022. As UNFPA, we know that climate change not only threatens the realization of women and young people well-being, but it impacts on their ability to enjoy right and choices. But worryingly, the climate change has the potential to reverse hard-won gains as we work to end preventable maternal mortality and the unmet need for family planning and end gender-based violence and harmful practices. Climate crises have a disproportionate impact on the most marginalized, including women and young people who face multiple intersecting forms of discrimination and marginalization. Peace, security, and development nexus is critical. And we know that conflict prevention and post-conflict recovery efforts that build community resilience in climate-impacted areas are only successful when they are data-driven and developed with the active participation and leadership of those who are the most impacted. This is why we support national and subnational population data system and analysis that help us to better understand climate risk, resource strain, and the potential impact on conflict dynamic and peace-building effort. It is also why we support youth-led organizations and networks around the world that are working on peace-building effort to integrate climate-related risks in their peace-building strategy, ensuring that adaptation measures and peace-building are conflict-sensitive and climate-resilient, while being rooted in human rights and gender-transformative approaches. In Niger, for example, we are working with UN Women and UNCDF to prevent violence and strengthen community resilience by helping communities adapt to climate change, establishing conflict prevention structures, investing in economic opportunities for women and young people, and developing infrastructure to foster economic recovery. Today, we gather to take stock of progress in developing the global framework on youth, peace, and climate security, and to galvanize commitment to advance effort towards its finalization by COP30. The continuation of the Relief, Recovery, and Peace Day inaugurated at COP28 with the declaration of Second Peace, Relief, and Recovery Day with a thematic focus on peace and security across various pathways of climate impact at COP29 signals a strong commitment by all member states to carry this momentum forward. Congratulations to all of you. UNFPA is deeply honored to co-convene today Roundtable with the Azerbaijan COP29 incoming presidency, the UAE COP28 presidency, and the Brazil COP30 presidency. We thank you for your partnership and your government and unwavering commitment of government across the world to this important agenda. I'm grateful to our co-convener, including YOUNGO and the Global Coalition on Youth, Peace and Security, and UN partners, including UNDP, UNICEF, and UNESCO, for joining us in bringing together a community of stakeholders committed to change. We are very, very grateful. Looking around this room, I know this esteemed community of member states, young people, Gen Zs, but alphas are coming, right? And civil society will be torchbearer who will carry forward the call for youth, peace, and climate security within every reception and every bilateral over upcoming summit of the future and UN General Assembly. And as we carry forward a pact for the future that unites us in the fight for climate justice and peace, I welcome you. We have until COP30 in Belém, Brazil, next year to deliver a compelling global framework for integrating youth, peace, and security principles into climate action. With requisite political and multi-stakeholder support, I'd like to thank you for joining today's roundtable as an important part of that journey. As we align all ourselves with the outcome of the summit of the future, I saw my colleague this morning walking here from Germany. He was going to scratch his head again to try to finalize that. Let us choose wisely. Let us act boldly. Let us leave a legacy of hope, please. For the alphas, the Gen Zs are already on board, leading. A legacy of hope and healing for people and planet over generations to come. Shukran jazilan. Sag olun, muito obrigada.
Thank you, Ms. Yin. So now we follow with the representatives that are here present. So I just want to remind you that you will have 2 minutes each to show your commitment of the respective entities. And we have 3 guiding questions. There is, how will your government or organization contribute to the global youth, peace, and climate security framework? What specific resource or expertise is your government or organization bringing to the table as part of this joint process? And what are the key gaps or priority areas that should be addressed in the framework? So that said, I would like to call Mr. Abdullah Nasser Mustafa, the Minister of Youth and Sports from Madagascar, to deliver the commitment. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello. Yeah, thank you very much. Bonjour à tout le monde. Dear estimated guests, and in Rhine and Grad, good morning, everyone. I'm honored to be here today as a newly appointed Minister of Youth and Sport of Madagascar. Youth, peace, and climate security are 3 interconnected issues that are increasingly urgent for our world. As we know, Madagascar is a youthful nation with over 70% of its population under 30 years old. The 3 topics that I just raised before are not isolated concerns, but rather than are deeply intertwined. Young people are disproportionately affected by climate change and its consequences, including conflict and displacement. For example, because of the drought, we call, you said it in French, sécheresse, between 250,000 to 500,000 people move from south of Madagascar to the west in my country, in my cities, to the west side of Madagascar. What happened? The parent doesn't work. The kids are out, vulnerable, violence, harassment, ethnic conflict. I can say we are lucky to have such of United Nations organization like UNFPA, UNDP, UNICEF, and UNESCO, who are there to empowering the government, to help the government in our project as a conflict prevent program. Actually, we are moving through the COP29, and it's imperative that we take concrete steps to implement the resolution adopted at the previous COPs. Delay in action will only exacerbate the challenge we face. Conversely, peace and stability are essential for creating an enabling environment for youth development and addressing climate challenge. Madagascar is committed to empowering its youth and promoting peace and climate security, as instructed by our President André Rajoelina, His Excellency. Recently, our ministry, the Youth and Sport, adopted the National Youth Strategy, and it was approved by the government, a comprehensive document aimed at empowering young people. This is one of the key components for this strategy is the development of community action plans by youth associations and groups. These plans are presented during intergenerational dialogues where stakeholders can provide support and guidance for their implementations. Young people in Madagascar have identified peace, corruption, climate change, entrepreneurship, and job creation as their top priorities. This demonstrated their awareness and engagement on these critical issues. Our role as policymakers is to support and to facilitate their initiative. I'd like to hear from you all around this table who have experience implementing projects related to peace building, or climate change. We can learn valuable lessons from their experiences and identify best practice, and also take the opportunity to invite all of the partners to support more Malagasy youth. We have, as I said before, more than 70% of the population. And as you know, Madagascar is an underdeveloped country. So what we are talking here today, it's our daily basis life. So that's why it was very important to me. It was very important for my government, for my president, to send me here today to raise this voice and to bring the 6 young youth from Madagascar with my delegation to participate in this high-level debate. Our youth, peace, and climate security, as I say, are linked. By investing in youth empowerment, promoting peace, and addressing climate change, we can create a more sustainable and equitable future for all. Let us work together to build a world where young people can thrive and contribute to a peaceful and prosperous planet. Let's leave legacy of hope for the next generation. Merci beaucoup à tous. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Excellent, Abdullah. Now I would like to invite Mr. Dane McQueen, Senior Director of the UAE COP28 Presidency, to deliver their commitment.
Thank you so much, Danielle, and thank you to UNFPA for hosting us, Leila for carrying the torch so well, and to all of the great speakers and participants today. As you can imagine from where we are in the world, the link between CPS and YPS is pretty straightforward to us. But we last year had the prompt of the global stocktake as our main deliverable for COP28 to go assess gaps and opportunities in implementation of the Paris Agreement. And what stood out so strongly was this blind spot around communities and countries facing conflict, fragility, and humanitarian needs. They received the lowest per capita climate finance, on average, usually 50% less, and in many cases, 80% less, or sorry, 80 times less. And this was, even intensified when you looked at the levels for youth, or for women, or for people with disabilities. So there's a very, I would say, growing recognition of this gap, and a few new ideas on how to start filling it. And we were really pleased last year with UNFPA and partners to begin some of this conversation. Maybe a couple points that I would flag that really came out last year. for a number of climate finance providers, having standalone windows for youth organizations is effective. It's very difficult for them because a lot of their donors will push back and say, this is too risky, there's no accountability around it. Or the climate finance providers themselves will say, I can't give a grant for $5,000. I can only do $10 million. And there's a big disconnect there. So when they did set up specialized facilities, there was a way to get money out the door to targeted groups. The other approach that came off well is in kind of youth mainstreaming in these programs, in climate programs in fragile and vulnerable countries. So having quotas around how many youth did you consult with when you were designing your program? Did you have youth in the room when you're doing the evaluation? At least if you can't have a specialized program, that you have some accountability and internal metrics around the people that you designed the program and evaluated the program with. And then the third point that came up and that we kind of took to heart as the COP28 presidency was this inclusion piece, where many times you don't, even if you are lucky enough to have youth in a decision-making setting, they may not be from a country that is experiencing conflict or fragility or humanitarian needs because of the additional costs. And they often have really great projects that they're working on and really strong perspectives on what actually works on the ground. So we, in our International Youth Delegates Program, which is about 100 youth that we sponsored from around the world for a year to go to different COP meetings and then come to the COP itself, we focused on SIDS and LDCs, and especially on those from these highly vulnerable and fragile countries. And also worked with YOUNGO and some of the organizing committees in countries where climate is a huge factor in fragility and conflict, but may not be explicitly on the agenda. So like in Syria, Afghanistan, to help them organize their own local conferences of youth, which then feed into the big conference of youth at COP28. So, looking forward this year, we're really pleased with the cooperation with Leila and the COP29 team. It's amazing that we had this big declaration on relief, recovery, and peace last year at COP28. The Azeri presidency has now continued that focus, and it will have a peace, relief, recovery day on November 15th. It's kind of a joke in the COP community that if you get a topic on the agenda 3 times in a row, you can never get rid of it. So I think we're on our way to making this a normal part of the discussion and not a fringe issue. And then keen to start working with climate finance providers and donors on how they can take some of these good examples from that are being developed under the framework and internalized and actioned within their own programs. So we're on board and hope to see you in Baku when we pick this up again in earnest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dane. Now we follow up with Mr. George Valdehavel. There is the contact point for the Peace and Security Working Group at YOUNGO, so you can deliver your commitment. The floor is yours.
Thank you for microphone as well. I want to introduce myself. I work in Agora. We focus on youth, peace, and security, and I lead the working group about climate, peace, and security within YOUNGO. I really appreciate this opportunity. We need to continue following paths towards peace and finding solutions based on sustainable development to attain the SDGs. I don't think we need to focus a lot in politics, right? But mostly on funding. That's what we lack as youth, the opportunities, support from member states, UN agencies, and many stakeholders. However, the responsibility lies in the member states, right? Countries, governments should be prioritizing our needs and most importantly, investing in projects that may prevent violence and that can follow paths towards peace. However, I know many people, networks, NGOs, collaborating together in order to find funds, grants that can support their work. And they lack the tools, the support from UN agencies and from the people that control those funds in order to be able to strengthen their proposals and actually fund their projects. So in Agora, we focus on funding and we support youth to apply to calls for funding. In YOUNGO, we support youth to participate in decision-making places, forums, focusing on the advocacy and not necessarily on the project implementation. Although I want to find ways to, or mechanisms that may be useful to integrate both sides, right? Like how can we participate, advocate, and in the meantime, find support to implement the projects that we want to carry out. And the second thing that worries me is the lack of integration between the UNFCCC's mechanisms. And I have a complaint because the UN agencies not necessarily use the official channels, the constituencies within the UNFCCC to support the participation from civil society or from marginalized communities, vulnerable populations, etc. So there is a lot of corruption, how to say this, moments where friendship is more valuable than your profiles or your backgrounds, right? Like this is not a meritocracy, right? Like people participate because they can, they are privileged, they know actors within the system that can help in their participation. So if we institutionalized those mechanisms using the official channels in order to support the people that actually need the help and not necessarily those that know friends within, then we would succeed, and build peace and solve the climate crisis. So what worries me is the lack of integration between UNFCCC's mechanisms and the rest of treaties, decision-making materials in the UN system. Because you were talking about measuring, tracking, and evaluating the way, meaningful engagement, the way that we are implementing funding, etc. But how can we cover, address all the efforts that many UN agencies are implementing, countries, member states within their own national bodies, right? Like we know many ministries that implement projects focusing on youth and the UNFCCC and climate change, and the UNFCCC doesn't necessarily monitor those efforts, right? So we want to know what countries and UN agencies are doing in order to improve. So a few thoughts. Thank you very much, Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Rodolfo. I would just like to remind you to be brief as you can be, because we have a long list, but it's really good to be hearing you. So now we continue with the intervention of the Ambassador Sandra Johnson-Lundy, the Deputy Permanent Representative of the Permanent Mission of Denmark to the United Nations. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Danielle, and congratulations on your good leadership of this meeting. There's no need to be nervous. Excellency, Minister, distinguished guests around the table, speakers, important voices in the room. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I have a speech with me here, but I think if I read it out loud, you're gonna have to listen extremely careful to hear what our commitments are. So let me instead put it in slightly different words. Let me start by saying that climate, peace, and security are really, really important agendas for my country. We have been engaged in those for a very long time. More separately, I would say, around peace and security, and then on climate on the other hand, and we are very engaged in bringing those agendas together. There's a lot of work to do, and we think that some of the important solutions that we need in that incredibly difficult space how to solve these massive crises that the world is facing, a lot of those solutions have to come from young people. So we do need to find ways to engage young people in the decision making, whether it's on the ground or at the global scale. That's much easier said than done. And I really want to thank the good examples that came from the COP process, that some of it comes down to that then we can't fund it because it's too small, or the accountability, which was always our concern because we do manage taxpayers' monies at the end of the day. So we do have to have proper processes for that. But we are from Danish side committed on this agenda, committed on lifting the agenda. We have just been elected for the UN Security Council and will take up our seat from 1st January. And we are committed in that process to do what we can to bring the voices of young people to that important table. We also support the global youth peace and climate security framework, which we think will be a very important framework to be developed. And we support the COP process, the engagement of young people in that process. I think it's incredibly inspirational to hear both of you talk about what can be done there. I also found a lot of inspiration in what Madagascar is doing right now, because that's the other side of the coin, right? How can we engage young people at the national level, where a lot of these solutions and progress need to be made? And there, I think our commitment is, first of all, we have a long tradition in Denmark to engage civil society, including youth organizations and youth voices in our own decision-making processes, and are always happy to share our hard-earned lessons learned, I would say, on that. But we also engage with a lot of civil society organizations around the world in other contexts, and we are definitely committed to make sure that there are as many voices of young people around that table as we can. So please do count on us and come to us when you see opportunities where we can help lift young people, the voices of young people, and bring them to the decision-making tables. We do think that's crucial, and we will do the best we can to overcome some of the institutional barriers that we are facing in that regard. So let me end there. Thank you very much for this important meeting.
Thank you, Ambassador Sonja Jensen. Now I would like to invite Mr. Sultan Kaisi, the Deputy Permanent Representative of Jordan.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, at the outset, I would like to extend our sincere thanks for organizing this event, UNFPA for hosting us, and for the kind invitation. Jordan is deeply committed to advancing the global youth, peace, and climate security framework, recognizing the crucial role young people play in addressing these interconnected challenges. As a country located in a region facing significant climate pressures, we understand the necessity of integrating climate action into our peace and security strategies. We are dedicated to fostering youth leadership in climate adaptation, peace building, and sustainability efforts, both nationally and internationally. Jordan brings valuable resources and expertise to these efforts. We have developed a Youth, Peace, and Security National Action Plan, which places a strong emphasis on climate security as part of our broader peace and security agenda. Additionally, we have extensive experience in water management and renewable energy initiatives, both of which are critical to addressing climate-related security risks. By leveraging our expertise in these fields, we aim to equip our youth with the tools and knowledge necessary to lead in climate resilience and sustainable development, particularly in water-scarce regions. However, there are significant gaps that must be addressed. First, there is a pressing need for more robust financial and technical support for youth-led climate initiatives. Second, we observe a gap in the integration of climate security into peace-building frameworks at the national level. To prioritize youth capacity building, especially in climate vulnerable communities, is essential for ensuring Chair in Peace and Security, we also stress the importance of closing the gap between policy and action, ensuring that commitments to youth, peace, and climate security result in tangible outcomes on the ground. To conclude, Jordan is committed to working with international partners, civil society, and our youth to advance the agenda by empowering young people and integrating climate action into peace building. We can build a more secure and sustainable future for all. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kaksi. Now I would like to call Mr. Park Sok, Counselor, Permanent Mission of Sudan to the United Nations, to deliver their commitment. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies and colleagues and the activists and friends and ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for inviting us and good to be here. Thanks for the very inspiring interventions we've heard so far. I should also say that I'm sent out to the Swedish mission to the UN by the FBA, Folke Bernadotte Academy, which is the Swedish government agency for peace, security, and development. So I sort of represent our agency and Sweden. We very much welcome the development of the global framework. We think it will be important in order to reinforce and support young people's resilient responses to the challenges we see in the world. Sweden, through the Folke Bernadotte Academy, we are pleased and happy to be able to contribute to the development of the global framework by being a member of the steering group. We hope that by being part of the steering group, we can contribute with some expertise on youth peace and security and climate peace and security that can be fed into the further continued development of the framework. In addition to this work, FBA is also working actively together with UNDP and the Stockholm Institute for Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, SIPRI, in order to develop a guidance note on youth, climate, peace, and security. It's called Beyond Vulnerability, a guidance note on youth, climate, peace, and security. This is expected to be launched next month in October. And we hope that this guidance note can sort of influence and connect and inspire and be part of the global framework as well, so that they can be interlinked and support each other. And the guidance note is based on young climate and peace builders' voices, and hopefully will contribute to an emerging understanding of how diverse young people are affected by climate-related security risks and what solutions can be found. Regarding the issue on gaps, the young people interviewed in the work of the guidance note stress very much the importance of funding. So in case the global framework could somehow encourage, like we do today in this meeting, encourage member states and other actors to commit to fund the actual implementation of these guidance notes and documents and frameworks, etc. That would be very welcome. But Sweden and the FBA, or through the FBA, is very happy to be able to contribute to the further work of these important agendas and naturally the finalization of, and then the implementation of the global framework. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Now I would like to invite Mr. Isaac Bayo, Lead Youth Peace and Security Expert, Permanent Mission of Sierra Leone. The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen and experts here. Sierra Leone is one of the countries most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. And it really does continue to be prone to both man-made and natural hazards, such as floods, landslides, tropical storms, coastal erosion, and droughts, which of course exacerbates poverty and displacement and poses a threat to peace and security. With 70% of my country's population under the age of 35, Sierra Leone's youthful population represents a tremendous potential for achieving sustainable development, and yet we continue to be disproportionately affected by the socioeconomic impact of climate change. I mean, the findings of the Sierra Leone's Truth and Reconciliation Commission remain a critical reminder that the economic disenfranchisement of youth undeniably contributed to the outbreak of violence and eventual civil war in Sierra Leone during 1991 to 2002, and that years of lack of education and employment opportunities drove us young people to join battlefronts during the war. Sierra Leone's journey from conflict to relative peace thus offers valuable insights into post-conflict reconstruction, reintegration, and community-based peace building. Our government is investing in the education and economic empowerment of its youthful population, as it represents a significant asset for peace building and climate action. A key strategic objective Sierra Leone's 2024 to 2030 medium-term national development plan is therefore to create an enabling environment for young people to undertake innovative and climate-smart business activities, to promote our participation in national development and peace building initiatives, and to build our capacity to participate in championing sustainable practices and advocating for environmental protection and leading to the transition to a green economy. One of the initiatives that we're prioritizing this year is the local conference on youth for climate change. And it's an initiative to address climate peace and security, which will be hosted in Sierra Leone later this year in October. The theme for this is empowering youth innovating for climate resilience and global peace. Again, Sierra Leone's vulnerability to climate change has necessitated the development of adaptive strategies and resilience building measures, which can severely serve as valuable lessons for other climate vulnerable countries. Our country commits to contribute to the global youth, peace, and climate security framework by leveraging our unique experiences, resources, and challenges, informed by the Presidential Initiative on Climate Change, Renewable Energy, and Food Security. Sierra Leone commits to ensuring that youth leadership is at the core of the development and implementation of locally led and focused climate action and adaptation initiatives, to partner with youth-led groups in recycling waste, especially plastics, through viable private sector-led green investments, to devolve climate action and climate governance in our country's 395 wards through mobilization of resources for financing locally led climate action, and to finally build the capacity of our country's youths to take ownership and participate in climate adaptation and mitigation interventions, adopt sustainable practices, and climate smart technologies for all. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Bello. Now we're gonna hear from Ms. Gabriela Ramos, the Assistant Director General for Social and Human Science of UNESCO. She was unable to make it in person, so we're gonna hear from her. So pay attention on the video, please.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to address this message to you, and I want to thank my dear friend Diane Keita for inviting us, but also for addressing this important link. This year again, 2024 holds records for extreme temperatures, with considerable impacts on people's lives, further threatening world peace and security. We are not on track to deliver for the climate transition we all agreed a decade ago. And young people feel increasingly insecure. The UNESCO Youth Climate Action Network has deployed efforts to capture youth views by launching a global study on youth challenges and actions in the climate crisis in July 2024. And there is no room for complacency after you see these reports. The result shows that climate change is a major challenging, threatening youth future. 78% of young people worldwide are very concerned about the effects of climate change on their future. And we know how widespread is climate anxiety among young people. 97% of young respondents thinks that climate change is a significant factor impacting global peace and security. So it means all of them, 97%. So the link is well established. Recognizing the issues young people face and the vital role that they play in shaping the future, UNESCO is committed to mobilizing its expertise to support the development of the global framework. Engaging young people is essential to achieve on-the-ground impact in the field that concerns us and also that brings together youth, peace, and climate security. And I put for your service UNESCO's toolbox of youth policy and programming, as we are working with member states and supporting them in devising inclusive youth policies and capacity building and intergenerational dialogues for stakeholders on youth engagement and development. And this has also supported the outcomes of the Summit of the Future. UNESCO has also been active in strengthening the access and capacities of youth in seeds to contribute the evidence building on youth identified challenges also through the Youth as Researchers projects on peace, cities and security and safety in Jamaica. Because we rely on youth researchers, they know better and they need to bring their voices in a very structured way. The upcoming COP29 in Azerbaijan really presents a unique opportunity to further advance this agenda. UNESCO will be present to engage with the COP29 presidency and our partners towards youth inclusive approach to climate action and peace building.
I would like to thank UNESCO for sending the video and Mr. Gabriela for sending the words. So now I would like to call Ms. Frontini Pickup, the Deputy Assistant Administrator and Deputy Director of the Bureau for Program and Policy Support, UNDP, to deliver their comment.
Thank you very much. And it's really great to be here with you all today. I'm also going to try and answer your question and not just read the statement that I have in 2 minutes. So, I mean, just to agree with some of the comments that were mentioned before me, particularly from the representative Jordan and from Denmark, we can do a lot more to integrate climate and peace. I think that's really important. And then within that, to really make sure that we have youth leadership and immediate, decisive and youth-led climate action. Youth leadership is vital. So I think that's the key point. I want to mention 5 things that we're doing to contribute. First, just to talk about the NDCs, right? So we are preparing as UNDP support to this 3rd generation of NDCs in the run-up to the COP30. And the good news is that 94% of the countries that we're supporting as part of that climate, what we call our climate promise, and that's over 126 countries in total we're supporting. So 94% have included youth in those NDCs. And that's up from 40% in the first round of NDC submissions. So there's still work to be done to ensure that the quality of that youth reference is meaningful, is good, but there's recognition of youth, and that's, I think, important. And so for us as UNDP, you know, the next steps are making sure that the ambition is there in those NDCs, but then also the financing and that they actually get implemented. And so for that, with the financing and the implementation, we need to make sure that youth participate and play a leadership role. And so here, UNDP has launched a checklist for policymakers on how to engage meaningfully with youth in the design and implementation of the NDCs. And we're also working with countries like Burundi, Guinea, Morocco, Panama, Kenya, and Zimbabwe to make sure that those NDC consultations engage youth meaningfully and then are scaled up. So that's number 1. And I'll go quicker now. It's really important to build youth capacity in this area. So one thing we did in Montenegro this year, we brought together this Generation Nexus Eurasian Youth Network for Climate, Peace and Security with the EU and COP29 Youth Climate Champion. Leila, during the capacity building workshop that focused on peace, climate and security concerns, and so on and so on. But one of the things that they were doing, going back to your comment, is really looking at how to help youth unlock innovative finance and work and access finance. And that workshop was in the lead up to COP29, and it was an example of youth leadership in action. Keeping on with this issue of finance, and I think making sure that finance gets to the local level and making sure finance gets to youth is critical. And so we've been engaging in this UNDP sort of climate promise Youth for Climate Global Initiative that we do with Italy as well. And we've engaged 50 youth teams from 39 countries. They received $20,000 each to implement youth-led climate solutions, including in fragile and conflict settings. So, for example, climate and energy network in Ukraine, climate education activities in Mali, and climate smart practices in Yemen. So that was my third point. My fourth point is actually repeating what the gentleman from FBA mentioned, which is that we are launching this new guidance on youth, peace and security. And that is really intended, as you said, to give very concrete examples, practical examples, real world examples of how youth are not just responding to these issues, but actually leading, right? So it's examples from different developing countries of how youth are leading in these discussions around peace and security. And then my final point is an invitation. We have a exhibit at the UN Bookshop, if you all know where that is, but it's a cool sort of immersive, interactive exhibit. I went and did it myself yesterday. And it's really about reimagining a new future of multilateralism where different generations make decisions together, future and past generations, and different species are all involved. So how we can engage with nature as a decision maker. It's really, really cool. So please join, because it's not fantastical. Right? There are examples in the world around us today where this is already happening, and it is possible. So a new multilateralism where different generations and where we make decisions with nature. So please come and join, and we fully support, it goes without saying, the plans for developing the framework. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pickup. Now we have the intervention of Ms. Vanessa White, the Global Lead, Conflict Prevention, Fragility, and Peacebuilding from UNICEF, to deliver the commitment.
Thank you so much. It's very good to be here with so many partners and climate champions. I'm going to try to time myself. So very quickly, just to note that 1 billion children face extreme risks of the planetary crisis, which is nearly half of the world's children. And so for UNICEF, this is a fundamental to our mandate. And last year, we launched our Sustainability and Climate Change Action Plan, which is really a whole of organization approach to building climate resilience, to empowering young people as champions, and to accelerate a transition to a carbon neutral world. Alongside that, we have been deepening our efforts on peace building, and in particular, looking at how to infuse a peace building and social cohesion lens through our sectoral work. This morning, I participated in a meeting launching our Wash for Peace guidance, which really reminds us that it's important not just to, through our technical solutions, counter the impacts of climate change, but also seize these opportunities to bring communities together when it comes to decision-making, shared water management, and you see them as opportunities to build trust and social cohesion. And then I'd say the last thing that UNICEF is doing is really trying to elevate the voices and leadership of children and youth as champions and as leaders in countering the impacts of climate change, whether that's through climate youth fora or a very participatory process for the Committee on the Rights of the Child, General Comment 26. To close with some brief recommendations echoing what others have said for the framework. The first, I think, is obviously a dedicated climate financing window for children and youth. And I think we've learned a lot on financing the YPS agenda, which UNICEF has been involved with through the Global Coalition. The second is, in addition to investing in leadership and participation of young people, we also have to look to the protection of those leaders and ensure that they are not being left vulnerable by their advocacy to reprisals. The third is really investing in research and addressing data gaps. For us, that includes looking at the impact of climate security on youth on the move and child climate migrants, and investing in gender and age disaggregated data on the impacts of climate and security. And then finally, I would say to ensure that through all of this, I've gone over time, sorry, that we really take a broader focus on what we mean by peace and security, to look at really these structural forms of violence and systems of exclusion and marginalization that result in unequal and distribution of power, wealth, the impact of climate change, and that we bring that ethos to our work, that we take a much broader look at peace and security for all children. Thank you so much. We look forward to remaining involved.
Thank you, Ms. Weiss. Now I would like to call Ms. Rosario de Pilar Diaz Garavito, the Millennials Movement, UNY Americas and representative from the GCYPS. I hope I said it correct, to deliver your commitment. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Danielle, for an introduction and for the opportunity. I just arrived today, so I do apologize for being so minutes late. Well, before sharing with you the commitment that we bring to this session, first I would like to say that the working group is chaired by UNOI, Peace Builders, and the Kofi Annan Foundation, and we have also a non-youth and youth-led organizations that are part of them. So one of the goals and the work of this working group is to bring to the table this nexus between the climate justice, climate security, and youth peace and security agendas in the different conversations of the Global Coalition for Youth Peace and Security. So I think that is a great step, because we are putting together two big conversations that needed to be together since the beginning. So now I would like to share a little bit on what is our commitment. I'm part of the UNOI Americas, and also the founder of an organization called the Millennials Movement. We are based in Latin America. And some of the work that we have been doing and the commitments is to ensure that children and youth are secure, but also that they have the tools so they can protect themselves. So, for instance, with UNOI Americas, we are working on a youth report, and one of the chapters is related to environmental justice and human rights. So I think that report is going to help young people in the region to understand better what is the context, but also what tools they can use in order to protect their rights. In addition, with the Millennials Movement, we have been working a lot in the margins of the Escazú Agreement. This is a regional agreement that is the first environmental agreement focused on environmental defenders' human rights. Even though it has like the Aarhus Agreement, which is an agreement in Europe that is referred to the rights of access and participation, and the Escazú Agreement also has those, also consider those rights. The Escazú Agreement is kind of closing many gaps, because we know that in the conversations, the climate change conversations at COP, it was very hard to include, for instance, language on human rights. And the Escazú agreement is focused on that. So the work that we have been doing on this process is to mobilize young people in the region, to sensitize young people. And we have partnered with different UN agencies such as UNICEF in Latin America. And actually we have promoted young people to participate on the conference of parts of the Escazú agreement. It's our third conference of parts that was this year. And we were able to advocate in these last 3 years for something that is related with what was mentioned some minutes ago about the funding. In the first COP, we were able to advocate and talk to UNECLA, but also some governments. So the funding allocation has an intergenerational approach. Now we have to keep advocating to see how that is going to be implemented and how we channel those funding for helping young people and children to be included on the agenda. But also in the COP this year, something that we have achieved, and it was a very big work and a lot of work that we did in March and in April, is that the Escazú agreement, the implementation framework, let's say, recognized environmental defenders, any person regardless age. So that is a great step, because now we can protect children and youth and consider them environmental defenders and implement different resolutions and policies considering them. So a little bit on the last point of my intervention is, what do we need? We need data. So with UNICEF, we have partnered with in a campaign called Voces por Escazú, or Voices for Escazú. And we are also collecting data on how violence is affecting children and youth environmental defenders in the region. So our governments can take the right decisions. But we also would like member states and other stakeholders to help us to gather data, because our resources are very limited, and most of the times we work in volunteering basis. What do we also need is intersectoral work, because many times when we have worked together in this process, in the environmental, let's say, field, whenever we talk about, okay, what is the response for children whenever they are defending the planet and their territories, they say, oh, well, that is not the Ministry of Environment, that is the Ministry of Women, of Vulnerable Populations, or Development. They are in charge of youth and children. So there needs to be this intersectoral work at the national and regional level, and of course, working in the regional processes. I know there is a process for, and they are advocating to having a twin brother of the Escazú Agreement in the Asia Pacific region. And we really hope that the regional commission and all the different actors can help people and young children and youth environmental defenders to have this agreement. But also we need that in Africa, we need to reinforce that in Latin America, and in Europe we also need to do that, and in the MENA region. So I guess that there is a lot of points that need to be connected, and definitely youth is here to help. We have helped a lot of young people since 2019. So I think that we cannot underestimate the power of youth, because we have achieved so much, but imagine if you help us, we could achieve way more. So thank you very much for inviting us. And we are going to be very happy to share with you the UNO Americas report, but also the findings on this data gathering around how violence is affecting children and youth when they defend and protect their territories. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Gavravito. I would like to say thank you for you all to the commitments, and now to inform that this conversation, it's not over. We'll follow up on the framework. We'll continue at the COP28 in Azerbaijan in November, as well as at COP30 in Brazil. So you should stay tuned to more information about the framework. And I would like just to say really quickly that to us, it's really important that this global framework will be launched at COP30, opens up an opportunity to place the lead role on leaders from the global south. So that's really important to us too. And now I would like to invite Dr. Will Zak, the Chief Program Liaison Branch, the UNFPA, to close this event.
Thank you, Danielle, for the excellent moderation, first of all. You did really great. Thank you. I think I heard two words that resonate with me. There's a lot of passion in the room and a lot of commitment. And this is what we wanted out of this meeting. And clearly so, because the urgency is undeniable. Young people are very concerned about the current situation on climate change and peace. And we have to put young people into the center. And we heard so many voices today, which is really reassuring, and youth leadership is so crucial and really, really reassuring. We at UNFPA, we are very concerned, but also very committed, and we're very happy that you were all able to come and to talk about the framework. And we're going to see again in the COP29 and COP30. At the COP30, we hope to have the framework, and not the framework is in the center, but the implementation of it. So we have to take it forward once we have the framework. We cannot do this alone with us in a room. We need more. I'm so happy we have our UN agency, sister UN agency, as I like to call them, because it's very important as we work as one UN and together with all of you. We look forward to seeing you again. We thank you for coming, and your voices are crucial. Don't forget that. And let's keep on moving the agenda. Thank you so much.
So, yo preguntaba del plan para implementar, porque con el framework queremos poner standards, ¿no? Like what governments need to be considering in order to know if we are actually achieving the goals, etc. But how, like, what is the operationalization strategy? Because this makes me to my second question, like,